have identified some very, very interesting anomalous type of aircraft.
Traffic is quite luminous and is exhibiting some non-ballistic motion, over.
Move very rapidly at any speed or whether any direction it wanted to go. Flag could change and go to the right or the left or go crossways without hesitating a bit.
What do you think it was?
Well, if they call it a flying saucer, that's what it is.
EWA 517, do you want to report a UFO? Over.
Negative. We don't want to report.
Look, it wasn't my worst Wednesday night.
Welcome, everybody. Good evening. Welcome back to another live edition of Anomaly Now, live from Austin, Texas. I'm Smiles Lewis, and
I'm Mark Jackson. Hello, everybody. Hey, Smiles.
Hey, Mark. Good to see you.
Good to see you,
All
too.
All right. Well, we've got some interesting articles, a little light on UFO UAP, but that's all right by me, but we may get to that. There's always something, there's always some new piece of footage, or, there's people whose business this is, and
yeah, it's an industry now, so.
Yeah. Well, welcome, everybody. This is Anomaly Now, the live weekly news, Anomaly News Roundup for the 501c3 nonprofit Anomaly Archives here in Austin, Texas. The Anomaly Archives was founded in 2003, and we do this weekly news roundup as a way of keeping folks up to speed on all the things going on. You can always go over to our website where we have a variety of links and the newsletter you can sign up for there. We've got a weekly newsletter. It comes out whenever the heck I can get it together, and you can sign up for free, or you can just read the copies of it that we post at the website anomalyorchives.org. That's ANOMALY archives.org, and we post all of our news links to our Flipboard over at flipboard.com. It's got a long URL. I won't bother, but you can click the link that is there over on anomalyarchives.org. And any given day, I'm posting a slew of articles of interest. There's been some stuff just in the last couple of days that I haven't had the chance to flip over or really digest. But oh yeah, there's that Baghdad Phantom UAP. Anyway, we'll get to some of that. But first on the list of stuff tonight is this article from the Jerusalem Post, jpost.com. New study discovers 8 new prehistoric human groups. Whoa. It unveils important changes in the genetic makeup of some regions following major climate changes, allegedly. This is pretty interesting. It details 357 ancient European DNA samples, including 116 new samples. I'm not sure what that means compared to the old, but did that just change on me right in front of my eyes? At least 8 new groups of previously unknown prehistoric humans were discovered in a new peer-reviewed study published in Nature. And of course, we'll be posting the links to these articles and others in the show notes for tonight's episode. But this details a range of time from between 5,000 and 35,000 years ago. And through analyzing the data, quote, the researchers were able to identify 8 new tribal populations who migrated into Europe. Some of the groups were developed enough to have survived the Ice Age. They mentioned that there is evidence through the DNA of interbreeding. There probably was some inbreeding too. But it brings up some new ideas, some new information, and some new theories about the spread of humanity. Obviously, there's much more radical speculation out there from the likes of Graham Hancock and many other alternative archaeology people who I actually respect and think have some very interesting ideas. But as they all say, and I've been saying for so long, every new discovery, every week, there's something that just pushes human civilization back and back. And In this case, it just fills in the
Yeah,
genetic.
and Miles, not even just pushing back the date of it, but the morphology and the types of humans. Florentius recently and the other ones were finding that there was a tree of humans, that Homo sapiens sapiens are just one little branch of a giant tree of bipedal humans. And this story backs up maybe a small, maybe a little bit larger piece of a branch, and maybe we're more like a twig. But I mean, there is this very large unknown and undiscovered, bipedal morphology, let's call it, and people can take a wild leap at where that could go, as to what other, cryptid hominids still are seen and documented on the planet today. Relict hominids, which is what they're actually scientifically referred to. But this is just a little nibble at the larger understanding that we really don't know what sort of morphologies that the humanoid physiology had taken at one point. That's outside, of course, of their intelligence, but just simply their shapes. And this is a group. I'm not saying these people had different groups, but these are subgroups within subgroups within subgroups. I mean, you look at the great apes all the way to us, and that just gives you a sense of the difference in morphology. And then you have subgroups like this. I find it very interesting. And take your own leaps there with your favorite cryptid, as to what still might be roaming around.
Right. We were just talking about the Florentius ones last week, and but I really find this interesting. The findings give rise to new theories. While it has been generally accepted that all humans originated from Africa and migrated to different continents, information produced in this study proposes the possibility that this is not the case. This Cosimo Post, a paleontologist at the University of Tübingen in Germany, and author of both studies, says it's actually quite interesting that the very first modern humans also had a very hard time to actually survive. I think that's not that unusual. Actually, I think survival is pretty hard in without civilization. And
think about the ice ages. If you didn't conquer fire, you had to go deep inside a cave where you were living off of geothermal heat, or you were basically covered in hair, which there's a lot of evidence that some of these subgroups had lived like the animals do today. We were talking earlier, and I won't spend too much time on this, but in 1962, there was a group started in Rome by some of the most leading scientists in the world. It was known as the International Committee for the Study of Relict Hominids. This is made up of 30 international scientists and I think I can pull up a quote here quick that says, this is a subject of the greatest importance of the understanding of the origin of man and the initial stages of human society. And this is where the term relict hominid first came from. And they decided that, there were all these missing branches and morphologies of the hominid that could explain how the heck we got here and how we survived. And are we the only ones that survived? Genetically, the study that you're citing right now in the news is suggesting that we've, of course, survived genetically. And we know with DNA that the Neanderthal gene has survived in many humans today as well. So it's an interesting soup, let's put it that way, and a lot of missing information. I keep an open mind. I think there's a lot to be understood still with this.
Oh, absolutely. And
anyway,
there's so much direction to go in, and that article didn't have that much detail. So I'm sure deep dives on the study itself would be worthy. This caught my attention, but I was a little disappointed as I read deeper into it. Chernobyl nuclear disaster altered the genetics of the dogs left behind, scientists say. I've heard, for a while now about the dogs that were left behind by the retreating human population as the horrible nuclear disaster was happening back in 1986, and the rise of these left behind animal populations in this case in the form of people's canine pets. And this article, mentions that, of course, it will, no surprise, there would be genetic changes, and they mention things like possibly, well, first and foremost, like cataracts, because that's a very common response. The eyes respond to the radiation, but also possibly smaller brain size and of course tumors. But they don't really go into those details here. But on the one hand, I was pleased to know that there is this nonprofit Chernobyl Dog Research Initiative and these other volunteers that are going in and trying to help these animals at least lead slightly better lives than they would have, I guess. Let's see. Researchers use
the population, persisted over the last 30 whatever years. So,
yeah, they've set these are like their descendants, presumably.
Right. Yeah, presumably.
Researchers used preserved blood samples collected from more than 300 different canines between 2017 and 2019 in locations with varying levels of contamination. And they've also been treating and sterilizing the dogs at the same time that the construction began for the new safe confinement facility for the nuclear reactor that failed. And there was concern that dogs living in the area may be a problem. But yeah, there's not much more. I thought that there would be a little bit more detail about the nature of the genetic changes. But if anything, it just seems like kind of a fluff piece that's like, oh, nuclear energy. Even dogs survive it, so it can't be that bad, right? Not sure,
There's another side to that too, and that's the ability for life to live through some very catastrophic things, life to persist, albeit with some, like you're saying, some very drastic changes genetically or whatnot. But over time, though, a lot of scientific theories pose that those sort of radical genetical changes actually turn into a strength to some sense, through selection and just sheer statistics of the sort of changes that can take place due to something like radiation and genetic manipulation. Let's say they get larger eyes and they can see in the dark better. That change, physiological change due to, let's say in this case, radiation, actually becomes an advantage. And I'm not saying that's the case with these dogs, but those theories are out there that
right.
these radical genetic changes sometimes turn into strengths and actually define or, cause a species to survive.
And proceeding along the same line of thought is this other article. This one's from bigthink.com. Strange life forms create an alien, quote unquote, ecosystem in an abandoned uranium mine. And this, again, just is a very brief article talking about the different strange oozing slime molds and weird melting looking stalactites and wall surfaces in this abandoned mine. Some of the pictures look pretty much like something straight out of the movie Aliens, that was excreted by the exomorphs, the xenomorphs.
These are known as extremophiles, is the scientific name for these. They live in extreme environments, mines that are highly contaminated with a variety of things. There's a famous mine up in Butte, Montana, that's been studied for years by NASA, is like ground zero for what life might be like on other planets, due to just the extreme nature and the fact that they find life that is existing in places where we would never ever thought that they would be able to survive. So hence the term extremophiles.
And similar to the other article, it's what's the bottom line? Life finds a way. This is something that I've always harped on in terms of just the nature of our existence in the universe. The fact that, the purposiveness that exists in the universe, that there's this, the force to live can overcome such massively, seemingly anti-life type forces.
No, these are
So,
the same
yeah.
mutations that we're talking about. That is very similar to the dogs of Chernobyl, right? There's a lot of similarities between these stories.
Yep. Other related studies. This one, all living cells.
I love this one. I love this one.
Could have the molecular machinery for a sixth sense. This, of course, another sense for the being able to do onto fields or electromagnetic energy. In this case, of course, migrating birds have long been looked at as a probable species that has this sort of ability. And over at sciencealert.com is this article by Carly Casella talking just about that. But now they're saying that the very molecules that do this for birds and other animals that have more overt known ability to sense and utilize these magnetic fields, that may be present in all life on this planet. The new findings suggest that magnetoreception could be much more common in the animal kingdom than we ever knew. If researchers are right, it might be an astonishingly ancient trait shared by virtually all living things, albeit with different strengths. That doesn't mean all animals or plants can actively sense and follow magnetic fields, but it does suggest that all living cells might, including ours. And this just, it's been a long slog trying to learn what exactly is happening with this phenomena. But I know that we've got some books in the archive that deal with this very area of research. And obviously, it seems highly probable that could help be part of the explanation for these amazing tales of cats or dogs that find their way cross country to the new homes of their owners and or the old home of where they were moved from and that sort of thing. Maybe that's a completely different situation.
Well, let's have a little fun with this for a second, and I won't stew on it, but we have books in the archives about remote sensing, and remote viewing. Remote viewing is supposedly uses the same sort of sixth sense with his electromagnetic fields that interact at very long distances. Also, there's the notion of, have you guys ever been in your car and then you looked over to your left or right for no reason whatsoever and somebody's staring at you and then they look away?
The sense of being stared at.
Yeah, there are lots of cases that demonstrate this variability in humans. Anyway, I think that. Look into that as you will. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we could make it to a little bit of UFO stuff.
Let's do it.
The dailyrecord.co.uk, I don't think they're a particularly reputable news outlet, but even the trashiest of news outlets is bound to have some kind of interesting headlines every once in a while.
Wait a minute, this isn't valid?
It might be.
I'm just kidding.
It's not the Weekly World News, but we all know that that's real too. Yeah. Come on, click that. All right, so over at dailyrecord.co.uk, UFO investigator claims to have solved "quote unquote" UK's biggest X-Files mystery in Scotland. And we were having an interesting discussion about this before the show. This very famous case, calvine UFO photograph. In this case, there being this how would you say, is that trapezoid or what? Angular, prismatic looking object there being shadowed by an aircraft that some believe was a Harrier jet with this either a cloud bank or some other uniform colored background, maybe a little bit of a tree hanging down from above, and in the foreground a fence line. Now, somebody I actually really like and enjoy on YouTube is this guy, Professor Simon Holland. He's a former broadcast producer, and he has a really great YouTube channel that deals with all kinds of things, but has predominantly been dealing with a lot of UFO material of late. And in fact, he's done some great interviews with the Rendlesham Bentwaters UFO witness John Burroughs, and he's done some great exposés on the early electromagnetic military research and radar and the intersection with all these with the UFO phenomena and plasma and this new technology to create holograms in the sky with plasma as part of defense techniques for advanced military aircraft, etc. And he's got just a slew of great videos, but he's come to the conclusion, and nobody's proved him right, but that what that object is some kind of test platform for an advanced stealth aircraft at the time. I think the photograph was taken in 1990. Yeah.
Yes.
And basically, he says, quote, "I discovered that the only other British Harriers were privately owned by BAE Systems, the defense contractor. They used their Harriers as multi-role defense test platforms, testing BAE advanced technology. Quote, I dug deeper and found that Marconi Advanced Materials, based inside BAE HQ at Wharton, Lancashire, were probably working on an advanced stealth skin material material for the U.S. Air Force." And so the idea being that this was somehow a test drone or a test aircraft designed to test whether this new metamaterial was able to create a stealthy aircraft, and then with the BAE's alleged Harriers pacing it, probably trying to see if they could detect it beyond visual, but also probably just helping clear the airspace. I don't know. It seems like
it doesn't have the typical lift profiles, though. I mean, so if they're testing a skin material, we're looking at the ability to stay aloft through lift technology, and I don't see that unless it's flying right at us and we're missing something. Like,
yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah.
So testing the ability of flight and testing a stealth skin, as it were, I don't know, that makes me look at this a little harder.
Yeah, but so I was intrigued by what you were bringing up as a you were saying that you've read years ago a debunking of this photograph as being a misperception of, I thought we were saying that, like, that this what the object was in fact an island in a still water vista photograph from above. And I have absolutely seen some UFO photographs and video footage that at once seemed very convincing that what I was seeing was some kind of aerial object, when in fact, once it was investigated, it was proved pretty conclusively that it was, like, as you describe, it was a sea type situation where with a boat on the water and its reflection causing a dual mirrored shape that was not something that the person, us as witnesses, third hand, would have guessed was anything other than an aircraft, when in fact it was a boat. So I don't know about that, but I'm really intrigued and would love to see some more.
It's an alternate theory that this photo was taken on a cliff above the lock, which is very near the location where this photograph was, purported to be taken. It's actually looking downward, and it just happened to be an overly calm day in the lock. And that's an island and what you're seeing is just the reflection of the island. And there happened to be an airplane flying over the top of the lock at this time. The combination of the luck of the two or whatnot then, was circulated around initially as kind of a joke, and then grew in its popularity. And it was just lined up perfectly. So there's an alternative theory. This is just an island with a reflection looking down with a plane flying over it.
I'm really intrigued by that idea because I love misperception cases.
Your brain wants to see what it wants to see.
So this is the person that allegedly actually took the photograph, Kevin Russell. He was a hotel employee at the time. Anyway, we'll post a link to this one, and you can draw your own conclusion. And as I said, I really enjoy Professor Simon's videos, and including he did one on one of my favorite British films, which actually we feature in the opening sequence to Anomaly-NOW, and that's the famous Quatermass and Pit, aka 5 Million Years to Earth, which is one of my favorite British Fortean sci-fi films. Haven't really had a chance to digest this other article written by our friend Micah Hanks over at the Debrief. Avi Loeb and the DoD's chief UAP investigator Sean Kirkpatrick say solving aerial mysteries requires known physics. It appears that they have become friends and have authored a paper that's linked into this article to a PDF over at harvard.edu. And, you know, it's just good to see these. Well, I know that Avi Loeb is the academic, and I'm not really sure about Kirkpatrick's background, other than he is the director of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, ARROW, and it just seems like that's probably a good thing that they're collaborating, right? Right?
You know, I skimmed through this, Smiles, and it seemed like obvious saying that most of what we're seeing can be explained, but he says with modern physics, typically radio waves. And so similar to your earlier statement about plasmas and things of that effect. But he's saying there's not exotic physics here. He's saying that I think what he's really saying is that these aren't UFOs at all. This is our technology. And I can explain them, and I will eventually, within our known physics framework, versus exotic physics that wouldn't be of this world, etc. Well, that's yet to be seen, but that was kind of my take, you know, kind of the undertone of the article when I read it. So folks, go to it and tell us what you think. I think he's kind of taken a dig at this whole industry that's kind of blew up over the last few years with these Corbells and all these other types, etc.
Yeah. And speaking of,
hey, good segue.
Here's the latest UAP photographs that people are talking about that I'm not particularly interested in, but here it is. I think they show it here in just a second. This is from a war zone north of Baghdad, and wow, you can see this black torpedo missile-like object flying across in a span of 7 frame grabs, and trailing behind it seems to be some kind of weird some kind of trail. And they in this video are making the point that, oh, this is not a missile because it's not showing as hot, it's showing as cold, whereas the background is showing as hot. And that this, I believe, was allegedly taken by a Reaper drone. I'm like, it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck. It's probably a duck. It's a war zone. There's all kinds of projectiles that may or may not show heat signatures the way you or I would imagine them to do. I don't know. I immediately was starting to look on. Let's look at Tomahawk missile footage as shot with a FLIR. And actually, the one thing I did find was an interesting. A military jet follows a Tomahawk cruise missile, and when it takes off, there's that massive plume of fire and smoke as it's launching. But then once it's like cruising along just above the water surface, as the military jet is tracking it, this wasn't with FLIR, but like to the naked eye, you could just see it looked like a little dark black squiggle above the water, kind of just like what we just saw there. And it ends up hitting a cargo ship, and there's all kinds of footage of that from different angles, and it's like, wow, okay, military porn. But
yeah.
Anyway, I just not that interested in it. I don't think there's that much to it. But
the industry will just squeeze every little bit out of it that they can. So stay tuned, everybody. Edge of your seat kind of stuff with that one.
Yeah. And before we go tonight,
who was it? Who could it possibly be? Was it? Oh, I don't know. Satan.
One of my favorite all times.
Oh yeah, man, that's one of the great SNL characters. It's the church lady, of course. which I was, of course, thinking of because of this little GIF here from in this article. Satanic Panic is alive and well in Southern Maryland. How a talk about historical witchcraft ignited centuries-old prejudices and bigotry. This is a pretty long read, but it's by an author and acquaintance of mine that I'm very much in great respect of, and that's Michael M. Hughes. He was one of the wonderful folks to donate his time and lecture talking about one of his favorite areas of experiential. Well, what is the tarot? A divination system. So he gave a lecture that you can see the archive of at our YouTube channel, where he talked about the tarot, because he's an expert on it. And but this, he gives lectures about witchcraft and historical looks at that sort of thing, and he basically just talks about how there's a new satanic panic going on in various parts of the country. And I think this is something that we've been seeing the rise of over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. It does seem to come in waves. There was, of course, in the 1980s where hundreds of people were convicted of all kinds of quote unquote satanic ritual abuse of children. And this testimony was often garnered through hypnotic regression or just from really bad interviewing processes, all of which, of course, is not to say that there aren't child abuse networks or pedophile networks or that sort of thing. But I think we've seen what the dangers of rampant speculation and just fear mongering around these subjects can bring. But he's just giving his personal account of how in the lead up to his going to give a lecture about Maul Day in this particular Maryland town, seemed to be presaged by local churches and concerned citizens, of course, doing what they do of making all kinds of allegations against people that they really don't know and aren't usually doing the kinds of things that they're alleging. But I encourage folks to go check that out. And of course, he goes into some great detail about as he says, modern witches, the vast majority of whom do not worship or even believe in Satan, are not spending their precious time every week cursing effigies of priests and bishops. This is a perverse confabulation conjured by someone stuck in the era of Michelle Remembers, that famous work. But
conversely, then pointing out the more than 600 cases of victims of children through the church itself. To show the hypocrisy, and we don't need to go into that because that speaks for itself. So it's at some point it becomes ridiculous.
But I love that he's pointing out that there's tons of occult imagery and history to the very practices of the people involved in these religions that are so fearful of this quote unquote satanic material and influence. But not trying to convince anybody here, other than, as he says, it's the whole point of Maul Day is to do unto others and be good to each other, and not get caught up in this kind of fear mongering. So,
good advice.
Yeah. Well, I just think that'll probably be it for this evening, and want to thank you, Mark, and everybody else for joining us.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
And we will be back next week and have a whole new slew of interesting headlines to share with you, and hope that you'll stay tuned. And you can go to the archives of the podcast over at it's best to get. They're all mostly at our YouTube channel. The most recent ones are on your favorite podcatchers, but the oldest archives are available through our YouTube channel, or you can actually find the links to it at our website. So,
Smiles, I have a quick question before we go out.
Oh, sure.
I know that we have different levels of technical capability week to week, being that we are a 501c3, and we're really doing this out of a passion project at the moment. But are we going to get to a point where we'll have the ability to have callers call back in? I know at one time we did a little while ago.
Yep. We still have it. It's just a matter of coordination and having help.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Yep, good. Well, we'll keep everybody posted on that. We'd love to have you call in and ask questions on these stories. There's no set time frame for this stuff, and we'd love to hear from y'all.
Right on. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and good night.
Bye, everybody.